All right, Nick. Are we just
Why
jumping
did
into the topic?
I'm reading the subject here.
How you been, Nick?
Why?
Uh,
Stop trying to make small talk with me. I'm trying to get to the heart of the matter today.
Did you go to Vegas this week?
I did not. Did you?
Yeah, I was at OpTech. Saw the apartment people.
How was that? We like those people.
It's tough, man. Like, they want to be so innovative. They really do. But they have such vendor lock-in with, the real pages and the Yardies, and it's just like, I don't know. That lock-in is brutal, right? If you really want, even if you have the right attitude to innovate, kind of like in the AC industry, right? When you're locked into Autodesk and Procore and Bentley and all these things, they're good companies from a stability and all those things, right? But you kind of have that vendor lock-in, and you try to do anything outside of that vendor lock-in, and it's really tough.
What side are you speaking for here? Are you saying from the startup standpoint, it's like
no, I'm saying from the customer standpoint, right? Like I was,
so who's the customer?
Yeah, like it's like, oh, we're gonna wait for Autodesk to do AI because I have no way of interrogating my Autodesk data without them, right?
Oh yeah,
Or
yeah.
Yardi or Real Page or anything. So if you want to do any kind of like, hey, let's run some experiments. It's pretty, but I was on a panel called Rise of the Robots. And
I saw that, and one of my questions was why was that at OpTech? Because particularly, so OpTech is a multifamily tech focused company. So like 99% of the solutions that you're buying as a multifamily developer and operator, it's software. So I was curious what angle they were coming at that with.
Yeah, so there were like 3 or 4 vendors there. There was one that was like robotic dogs that do security, so they patrol your property at night. There was one that like cleaned, like vacuumed and stuff, right? So I mean, but I think the curveball I kind of threw at them was they were very focused on this like property management robots.
Yeah,
and I was like, well, you understand your tenants are going to have robots. Like you're going to charge a security deposit like you do for like large dogs. Like, how are you factoring in that your tenants, your residents are going to have humanoids? I don't know if you remember those hovercraft that were very popular that the kids were all on for a minute.
Skateboard thing.
Yeah, the skateboard little things.
Right? Yeah.
Those started catching on fire, and our friend Manav, his apartment complex burned down. Remember?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that was a hoverboard that caught on fire.
I mean, I'll admit, I did not know that was a hoverboard that caught on fire. I remember when his apartment caught on fire. Wow.
Yeah. So think about that. Like now you're going to have all these humanoids that people are buying secondhand off eBay that are made in China. Nothing wrong with everything that's made in China. Not making a political statement or anything, but cheaply made and then probably used. And some kid in student housing is like, hey, I bought this robot, plugs it into charge, goes to class, and comes back and your building's on fire. And it was pretty interesting. I got a lot of questions about it because nobody had really thought about that, which I was pretty fascinated by.
The humanoid for the home topic has become like super in vogue in the last month. I don't know if you've seen that, but there's 2 companies. One is called their humanoid is called Neo. They put out the launch video, and it's like a $500 a month subscription to get this humanoid for the home that does your laundry, and it finds your keys for you, tells you where your cayenne pepper is. I've watched the launch video like 10 times if you can't tell. And the other one is go ahead.
Unitree has one too.
Yeah. So it feels like we're at this inflection point. So yeah, I think that piece makes sense to me. And I would expect the multifamily industry to be like super reactive, a year or 2 from now when people actually start having them. And then I think to your point, one of the big objectives they always I've seen the multifamily industry try to focus on is privacy and security. So I would imagine like humanoid walking in the halls, like taking photos. That's, I mean, I think that's like a very obvious one, but yeah, the privacy and security, like who's letting who's letting humanoids in the door if they're delivering food. We've seen that one come up a couple of times. I mean, that comes up with gig economy workers all the time. So yeah.
Yeah, we've gotten call in a couple times from owners saying like, "Hey, our architect hasn't even considered that humanoid robots might be working in our hospital side by side. They didn't design for it." And when if you're designing, I mean, look, if you're designing a building right now, a commercial building, and you're not considering that robots are going to be in this space, whether it's humanoid or rovers or whatever, you're failing as a designer, right? Like you're not. It's you can argue, is it 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Well, I'll tell you, it's within the life cycle of the building, right?
What an interesting thought, though, that you have to design with that in mind now. 5 years ago, that wasn't true.
Mm-mm. Well, I was having a conversation with the hospital, and they said, "Well, we think the humanoids will just be on the same elevators as the humans." I'm like, "Do you think that's okay?" Right, Nick? Would you want to go up 20 floors by yourself with a humanoid standing right next to you? I don't know if everyone.
I think that'd be awesome, but that's just
a lot of people, that's kind of freaky, right? Like, so there's this transitional period. I was talking about like when like Bluetooth headsets first came out, the Jabra, and it was like this big thing on one ear, which was just weird to me because it like lacked symmetry. And I just thought people that walked around with those Bluetooth headsets were weirdos. It's like I would never. But then by the time the AirPod came out, I'm like, oh, this is nice, right? Like it's just there's a break-in period for us mere mortals, right? That we may not be comfortable existing in the same space as a humanoid. And so we're having this debate, like, do you actually have a cargo elevator for the humanoids and other robots and segregate them from the humans? How do you think about stuff like that? It was really interesting. And then I had our friends at Schneider Electric, the executives there, invited me to their innovation summit. I bet you'll never guess what the big topic of discussion was.
Couldn't be data centers.
It had nothing to do with AI factories. That's what they call them now. They're AI factories.
AI factories.
They're AI factories. Yeah.
NVIDIA. Wow.
Yeah, NVIDIA crushed their earnings yesterday, and that's all he talked about on the call was AI factories. It's not data centers. We don't make data centers. They're AI factories now.
Yeah. Thank you, Jensen.
So it's pretty cool. Rev from NVIDIA gave a talk and said hello to him. Of course, all of our executive friends at met a bunch of the AEC CEOs that were there. And Zach Brown from McLaren came by, which was kind of cool since it's Formula One week. So
Formula One week in Vegas.
Yeah. That's this weekend. So all the Formula One people were kind of hanging around the place. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, it was all about AI data centers, AI factories, and evolution. But I mean, I learned a lot. It's so hard to keep up with this stuff, right? It's just like near impossible. And so, and you can only listen to so many podcasts and learn anything. But it was nice to kind of have the big picture and some detailed dives on what's happening in the AI factory space.
Any out of left field surprises in terms of what Schneider was focused on?
I think they're very focused on partnerships, right? So what people are kind of saying with these AI factories, there's so many players involved. If you have a vendor mentality, you're not going to get very far. Because by the time you envision the project, you start executing on it, things might have changed a lot. And so what's the difference between a partner and a vendor? Things are highly defined and highly commoditized, right? Probably a lot less flexibility, right? And I think the difference was like, their narrative was partners because you envision something today, by the time you build it, the situation could be very different. So you really have to have partners that are really working. That word gets thrown around so much, right? But that was kind of the idea, is that if we're going to continue to do the things we're doing in AI, the AI factories really take people with open mind, flexibility, constant learners, right? You can't show up to a job and say, well, the last 3 data centers we did it this way. It's like, that's actually irrelevant. Like, it's actually irrelevant. Tell me what you know today and where you think things are going. So I thought it was a lot of fun, actually. My friend, the Amr and the guys there were just so um, gracious. They let me in all the rooms I don't belong in. so, I got to talk to a lot of folks. It was fun.
I'm surprised they give you backstage passes there. That doesn't make any sense to me. But
I know, just
good on them.
Makes no sense at all. So, but anyway, no, that was pretty cool. But
that is cool.
Yeah. So what do you want to talk about today?
I've got one topic. Got one topic. Finally, you're letting me get there. The topic is your latest Substack post. It's called "Why the Design and Construction Industry Needs an Uberification Moment." Okay, that's the working subject we got here. Actually, a pretty long article for you. That was my first observation. You're usually someone who operates with a lot of brevity, and I was reading this. I'm like, wow, this is longer than most for KP. This is like, a little bit more well researched, well rounded than I typically see from you.
So I was traveling this week. I had a lot of alone time.
All right, so let's dig in. So set the stage. What is this piece about? I have a bunch of follow-up questions on it, but yeah, give everyone a glimpse into the analogy and the frame for Uber for the AEC industry.
Yeah, I think if you look at the existing construct of taxi cabs, right? I mean, if you look at Ubers now, it's not like it's that much cheaper. It's not really a price comparative to taxis. In fact, in New York, a lot of times I'll jump into a taxi. But I think if you look at what we bought with taxis, was not a lot of transparency. We didn't know when they would show up. We didn't know what we were getting in terms of the driver and what the experience was going to be. We didn't really know how long it was going to take us to get there. And if it was a new city, we didn't know if they were going to take us around the block 4 times and we wouldn't know any better. Right. And then we didn't know so we didn't know when we were going to get there. And we didn't know how much it was going to cost. Sounds a lot like building a building. When are we going to start? How are we going to get there? What's this experience going to be like? I can pretty much guess I'm not going to be there on time and on budget. Right. So that was what kind of course, I was in Vegas when I was writing this because there's Ubers and Formula One weekend. It's just a lot of activity. And I was like, hey, if you think back about like some of the first principles around Uber when they built their app, it was all about the experience. And the experience was, I'm going to be trained. I'm not going to say I'm on my way. Right. I remember back in the day when I would call a taxi cab company and then no one would show up. And I'm like, hey, where are they? Like, oh, he's on his way. Let me radio them. And the reality is they didn't know where they were because they were radioing them. They didn't have a GPS and stuff. And so it really resonated with me. That's probably why I got a little bit longer with it. Was I went down that rabbit hole of like, wow, this analogy really works. And so I think that's the idea, right? So the idea of having transparency, in Uber's case, in real time, of what's happening, like what are people doing, maybe I need to report back that this engineer is
Yeah, I think the mechanics of what made Uber such a disruptive tool for people to use, I think are actually pretty analogous. And so your point on transparency, let's like dig into actually what that looks like on a for Uber and then on a job site. So for Uber, the price of the vehicle, the price of the ride before you get in, the driver, the driver's rating,
their rating, i.e. their work history and customer satisfaction.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. The, how long it's going to take for you to receive the car and then get to the end destination. I mean, basically every piece of the equation, right? And I think your analogy to like, okay, compare that, compared just to the taxi industry before we make the leap to construction, there was this period of time, with taxis where you had like zero visibility into any of it, like literally zero across the board in all those examples, unless you've taken the ride before and it's a familiar location, right? Like if you're taking taxis in New York City, that would be the exception if you live in New York, right? But if I'm going to New York City for the first time and I'm going to Brooklyn and I'm, Upper East Side, I don't know the best route to get there. Right? I mean, they could totally take advantage of me, and like I don't know what the price should be. So you're operating fully on this, like you're operating on trust. And I think that was the core variable that, you had to have as a rider to get in the vehicle, is like you had to trust they weren't going to take advantage of you. And when Uber arrived, that was no longer true. It was completely trustless.
Yeah.
So pulling that thread to the construction industry, the visibility and the transparency on a current day project, what percent would you give it?
It's like 10% transparency. And I think so. There's two variables, right? There's the transparency, but then when do I get it, right? I get lots of transparency after things have already happened. I don't get a lot of transparency into things before. Like you don't get an opportunity. It was so funny. I was walking back in the airport. It just happened to be on the moving sidewalk with the guy, and he was like having a very aggressive conversation. And he mentioned a general contractor that we all know. And he was just like, those assholes just sent me another invoice and I don't know what it's for. And they're getting on to me about paying it. I just thought it was just wild, like the coincidence of it all, right? That this guy's standing next to me. So I think there's a little bit like, I have to trust you and you're going to send me bills and, but it's more like after the fact than ahead of what happens. So I think there's two things. One is the level of transparency, and then two is the timing of it all.
So okay, so let's say your 10% number is correct. Let's say we're 10% visible and transparent into exactly what's happening on a construction project at a given time. If a contractor today adopted a really forward-thinking, transparent approach to technology, and they used the best in class tools across all workflows and components of the value chain. So they used, project management that invited the owner and all their subcontractors into the software. If they used real time reality capture, if they were taking drone imagery every day and uploading images, if they were if they had communication dialed in terms of change orders and just the right practices, submitting those as soon as possible when when an error occurs. What could that take you to if you were like absolutely best in class in terms of rolling out every piece of technology out there today? Like, is it 50%? Is it 40?
Yeah. I mean, how many rideshare companies are there? It's two.
Like two. Yeah.
You'd be one of two. You'd be one of two.
Three with Waymo, but
yeah. Okay, three. No, I really, I mean, because the other thing I was observing on the way to the airport, I called an Uber, and it said 1 minute away. He ended up being a minute late. It was really bothersome to me. I don't like it. It's just, you know what I mean? Like the standard changes, right? I'm like, I can be a little bit of an asshole, but like, it was just like, oh my God, it said 1 minute and now it's 2 minutes. He's twice as late.
But, stepping back, like the most ridiculous,
right?
Point of frustration ever. Like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I mean, what an insane thing to think.
Right, exactly. So, but
I hear you. I've been there too. I get it.
Yeah, and so think about that standard, right? Like that's the bar now. And so think about it being a construction company, and it's like, oh, we were a day late. if only, right? If only. Now the customers that got used to your service, like, man, you were a day late, right? Um, you'd be like, okay, well, normally everyone's like 30 days late, right? Um, the idea that, oh, you never had to touch your contingency fee, you never had to touch your contingency budget. I mean, I think it's fairly safe. You'd be one of 3 companies doing all the construction.
So another way to ask my question: what if we're coming from 10% in terms of the average construction process transparency for the owner? You're the owner, and I'm a GC. So yeah, I'm a GC, or I'm your owner's rep, and I'm in charge of making sure that the project is as transparent as possible, because that's what the owner is looking for. And I just thought it was a smart thing to do. Like, I want to win business, and I'm going to sell on transparency. How far can you get it? Can you be 100% transparent on a project today? Is it possible to do that?
I mean from a technical perspective, or a willingness?
Purely from purely from a technical standpoint.
I don't know that it is, because it requires the people that work for you to be 100% transparent and have the systems in place. But I think you could get close. I think you could get close. I mean, you could definitely get to 60% or 70%, right? Because I think sometimes, employees have stuff in their head. They're like, oh, I'll write it down later. I'll fill out that report later. It's just the nature. It's not built into their natural order. Unlike the Uber driver today, clicks the button, clicks the app, and it's like, it's just, they don't have to do anything, right? So I don't think the teams at an individual level are equipped to provide that type of transparency. It's also interesting too, if you think about it. There's this interesting dynamic. When I used to own an engineering company, and one of the challenges we had is my partner, it was a small firm, and we grew to like 50 people, right? When he started, it was 2 people. He never had people fill out timesheets or do any of the administrative work. So getting the existing people to change was massive. New people came in and like, no, you fill out your timesheets. This is the job. This is your job, right? This is how you do it. Nobody ever pushed back. It was the existing people that had to go through the change of doing it. So if you think about it, now you do have apps and taxis like Curb and other stuff, right? To try to deliver that kind of experience. But I would say is that the drivers at Uber were new. They didn't know any better. Oh, this is what the job is. Like, I signed up for the Uber app, and I used the Uber app, and this is how things were done, right? Whereas even if you would have gone to a taxi cab driver and said, hey, you need to download this app, they're like, what do you mean I need to download an app? What are you talking about? Are you going to track where I'm going? Are you ready? Okay, I'm not going to let you track where I'm going. So I think there could be a similar aspect in this industry, is it might be hard to change your people into feeling comfortable providing a level of transparency around their day, around their work, because you're asking them to do something that they've never done before. So it might take a new type of, it might require, like, honestly, like a new type of construction company.
Well, that's kind of where that's when I read the piece, that's where my mind went. It was the only way to affect the sort of change you're seeking, unless you're comfortable with a very gradual approach over time, which could occur, but like, we're talking on the orders of, like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years. I think we could get there. But the ultimate forcing function is competition. So construction company A is not transparent. They're operating with traditional methods. They're operating in opacity, in a black box, and just kind of telling you how it goes, like it is today. Construction company B, GCB, is the transparent construction company. They're operating every technology out there that promotes visibility into what is happening, and communicating as early, as often as they possibly could to their owner. They've implemented reality capture. They've implemented the best project management tools. They have they've figured out the communication equation with their subs. The subs feel great about it because they know exactly what's going on. schedule wise. They're never surprised. Of course, road bumps still happen, but like culturally, they're building their company around this idea of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
I actually see that as like a viable way to build a construction company today. I mean, is that a reasonable thing? Like, do you think that could occur?
Yeah.
Like, can that company compete?
Yeah, I
with
think,
yeah.
No, I 100% think so, because I think one, I think you might actually, it's, I'm not saying it's lying, but hiding stuff and not being, some of it's just a natural order of like things move quickly. We don't have enough, we're operating off limited information. But I don't think most employees really want to like be non-responsive, let things get to a bad place. I had my first business partner used to have a saying like, bad news is not like wine, it doesn't get better with age. And used to really, really promote this idea of like this radical, what they call now radical candor or whatever, right? Radical transparency. He was just like, if you keep stuff to yourself, you're just going to be a stress ball all the time, right? It weighs on you. So you're better off the minute you know something's not working, go tell your boss. Just go tell them like, hey, I got behind. I accidentally deleted this code, like whatever it is. Like, it's all very solvable. But I think it's as much. I mean, I think you and I probably agree. Like, I mean, does the technology exist to operate this way? Yeah, I think so. Right? I think so.
You'd have to stitch stuff together. Like you'd have to have a very technology enabled approach.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to have software engineers on the team.
Right. But it exists, right? We're not going to have to go invent anything.
It can be done. It can be done.
Yeah. So then it's really a cultural thing of letting people know, like, hey, the client has access to the job site cameras and real time data, and you're rewarded. You're rewarded for transparency, and you're kind of reprimanded for if you hide stuff, right? And that there's incentive alignment around that. Now, it also takes the owner or the developer to sign up for this. Like, would you rather have bad news fast and be able to make decisions, and you can't like beat us up over it, or would you rather have bad news layer and you're locked in and the decision's been made for you?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because the owners might be just as bad, right? I mean, culturally, right? It might not just be that you need a new type of GC. You might need a new owner.
How do you think apply this a bit to design and engineers? Like, we're talking, I'm talking about the most transparent GC in the world, but what does that mean? Like how can design and engineer firms support this idea? Can they do the same thing? Like, can they have the same impact if they do that?
Yeah. So about 12 years ago, I was doing some advisory work for a very large architecture firm, like a global one. And they came to me and they said, hey, we're working with this tech company. They want our team, as they're drawing in Revit, to leave screen sharing open, because they want to be able to like, put their head in on what they're doing. And if they're going down a design path that they're like, oh, don't do that, they want to be able to like message them and say like, hey, I saw what you're working on. That's not actually how we want things to be designed in our, it was a workplace thing. And so the client asked like, hey, I want my facilities team to be able to real time watch your people drawing. Which on one hand, it's like, are they sitting around and going to watch people draw? No, they're going to pop in whenever, right? But at least you'll get feedback from us in a more timely manner than our every other week design review meetings, where maybe you've gone down a rabbit hole that isn't the right thing, right? This architecture firm said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We would never do that. It's not appropriate. It creates liability. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons, right? And so I asked the CEO, I was like, well, what would take all these liabilities and all this stuff away, right? isn't this what it, we talk about being collaborative with our customers, our clients. Isn't this like ultimately just great collaboration? And he was like, no, like, I don't want to be criticized by the owner for maybe mistakes we make along the way. I don't want them to see how the sausage is made, right? Right.
It's like the classic creative response, where it's like, I don't want anyone infringing on my creative process, or even being able to view it. That's a pretty.
Right.
I mean, yeah, that's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you think the owner was asking from a place of just transparency? Is that like where they were coming from? They just want to know what's happening.
They just want to know what's happening. They also, they're one of the top technology companies. They also felt like maybe the requirements changed a good bit along. Like, they just wanted to know what was going on, and their facility. This is their office workplace solutions group, and they were concerned that if something came up along the way, like, oh, it turns out X, Y, and Z, that I can collaborate with you. I don't have to wait for 3 weeks to get back to you. Right. And I think there is something to be said, when you are sending deliverables to an end customer, you go through a cycle of, because the other argument would be like, well, just send them updates every day. At the end of every day, just send them an updated file, right? Well, the problem was that the belief was that creates a lot of overhead, because we're never going to send a client a file that hasn't been QA'd, that hasn't been reviewed. So that's like an overhead to do that pretty often. So I think they were just, I don't think they were trying to like, and I think a lot of times the first thing people do, if I want to provide, if I say, hey, Nick, I'm going to sit behind you as you work all day, the immediate, I think, human reaction is, oh, you're trying to see if I'm productive. And
you're trying to micromanage me. Yeah.
Right. I don't think these clients were trying to micromanage. I think they were really just saying like, well, because their point is, being a tech company, they live in a world of GitHub, where you do have a lot of like real-time transparency of what people are doing.
Feedback loops are super, super tight. Code is immediately visible. It's it's not a
daily stand-ups.
Yeah, it's not an artifact that requires weeks of turnaround time. You can view it in real time at any time.
Yeah.
That's very, very, very true. It's like a cultural thing.
Yep.
I thought one of the most interesting parts of the piece to me. So I'll read this quote. So the construction industry doesn't need flying cars or robot builders. It needs the same transparency revolution that transformed transportation. The technology already exists. What's required is a fundamental reimagining of how information flows through construction projects. Real-time project visibility would allow all stakeholders to see what's happening on site, not just what's reported in weekly meetings. Drone footage, progress photographs timestamped and geotagged, and digital progress tracking could provide an ongoing visual record of work completed. Clients and project managers could check on their projects as easily as they check on an Uber driver's approach, opening an app and seeing current status just simply at a glance. I think that paints a pretty good picture of what could be possible if someone actually embraced wanting to be transparent in their operations.
Yeah.
The other thing that stood out for me is the first line, though. The construction industry doesn't need flying cars or robot builders. We talk a lot about robotics. We invest a lot in robotics and more futuristic stuff. But like maybe to start, the Maslow hierarchy of needs is a commitment to transparency.
Yeah. No, and think about that. Without transparency, how are you going to deploy robots without transparency? Right? If robots are going to operate in real time, there has to be a flow. There has to be a consistent kind of flow of information and motion controls, right? Robots aren't going to interpret what you meant.
Mm-hmm.
You do what you said, right? What did you say, right? So no, I think it's. I just think I think lately I've been really focusing on what the theory of change could look like without getting into the weeds, right? I think one of the things that we tend to do, you and I talk to so many startups every week, and all of them seem to believe they have the answer, right? If everyone just ran their entire project on Procore, everything would be perfect. And it's like, that is actually not even true, right? Like, because it's not really as much a technology problem as it is kind of an actual cultural point of view problem than anything else. I mean, I think as consumers, we could have sat here and said, like, I don't want to get into a taxi unless I have full transparency. And we've gotten nowhere. And so even owners that think that they might be able to demand this will probably not get it. Not unless someone shows up to offer it up. And even then, sometimes they might be suspicious. I mean, did you ever take Ubers like early on when it was like a shared, like everything was UberX?
Yeah.
I remember the first ride I got on. I was the first one in, and I was the last stop out, which it wasn't super clear about that. I was like, what am I like? I was the first one in this car, and I'm the last one getting out. Like, and it was a little frustrating, right? Because I'm like, these four other people showed up in this car, and I gotta wait for these people to get. It's like being the last stop on the bus route, right? So, but and just the idea of like jumping in a car with a stranger, right? That
Yeah.
trope has been talked about plenty of times, right? But I do think it took a minute, right? And then people got comfortable with it.
Yeah. Eventually, they came out with Uber Pool,
right?
A specific carpool service, and then UberX was, you're going solo in the car. Uber Pool got really good at. I did this a lot when I lived in Chicago. There was no trains in the side of the city where I lived, so would take Uber Pool to work to and from, and they got good at telling you what stop you were along the carpool journey.
Yeah.
Like, we realized that was lacking the transparency, basically.
Yeah.
There was no reason why they were still routing it in the same way. There's no reason they couldn't tell you. They just didn't have the software updated. But yeah, that makes sense.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny though? Every once in a while, when you order an Uber, and maybe it's at an event or something, my little experience this week was like 1 minute, right? But the fact that I was tracking it is wild, right? Like, wow, they're late. But think about how many times you've been like maybe at a concert or something, and it says 5 minutes away, and then the time keeps going up and up, and you're like, what is happening, right? And I always think about that, and sometimes they're not great at it, and you feel like they're lying to you, right? You feel like, oh, they told me it was going to be 4 minutes, now it's 12 minutes, and you get frustrated. So, I think it's going to take. It's a massive opportunity for someone to take on, but I think we both might be right in terms of, like, it probably is a new firm, a new type of GC. But I think the other thing is, like, it's this ongoing thing. I got another deck sent me today, like, hey, here's the 10 problems that are wrong in the construction industry, and our software is gonna solve all of it. And I don't think that's the case, right?
Yeah, my response to that is it's a full stack effort to solve this problem. Like, it can't be. There's no point solution. It can't just be reality capture. It can't just be the software. It can't just be a communication, just a dialed in communication app. Can't just be a scheduling tool, scheduling optimization. It's got to be everything. And so someone's got to put all those pieces together and run with that full stack firm in mind. I think that's the only way that you can actually get to full 100% transparency. I really, for what it's worth, I really believe, like, I believe every construction company would benefit from this. It would make their operations better, it'd make their clients happier. I think it's going to happen because I think it's gonna, like, someone's gonna do this. Like someone will be the most transparent construction firm in the world and just start winning a lot of business because that's what owners want.
Yeah.
And so if the competitive function is what forces everyone else, basically pulls the industry forward, I think that's a great outcome. And I think like if you talk to most contractors, if you talk to other stakeholders in the industry, I think everyone wants a more clear, a more transparent, a more visible work environment for every single stakeholder that they're interacting with. I think like that is a consensus opinion. And I think what's been lacking is the incentive structure and the cultural alignment to make it happen. So let the competition do it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Back, gosh, almost 20 years now. I had a company when we were leveraging BIM to do constructability review, right? So it was like, if you can't build it in the computer, you can't build it in the field, was the business, right? That we built up and sold. And it was really interesting because we actually rated the drawings, the architecture drawings, the engineering drawing. Like we actually gave them a feedback loop of saying, hey, here's how you could have improved your drawings through our system. And I would talk to a lot of general contractors because I had some general contractors call me up and say, hey, look, because we're mostly hired by owners. Like before we put it out to bid, run this through your system, right? And then we started getting calls from general contractors. And I would say, like, why do you want to know the issues? Are you trying to like low bid and make it up in change orders? And some of them were, not all of them. But I had several of them come in, no, like, do you think we enjoy delivering change orders? Like, do you know how hard it is, what a negative experience that is? And it was funny, like one of them explained it to me. He's like, it's not that we want change orders. It's a snowball effect from someone in the field maybe misses something. Then they go to their trade boss or their supervisor and say, hey, this is going to take me 10 days longer because of X. That person wraps up that variance that trade does and bundles up and gives it to the sub. And the sub bundles it up and gives it to the GC. And the GC bundles it up and gives it to the owner and says, hey, I need more money, right? And that's just like a long cycle. But to the GC, they're like, we don't really benefit that much from this stuff. Yeah, margins, we make money on it, right? But it's just not worth it. It's not worth the trouble. And because I always kind of had a mindset like, I mean, these contractors, man, they make so much money off change orders. Back when I was an engineer, I was like, oh, they make all this money on change orders. They love it. They're loving all the change orders, right? And I had several CEOs come to me like, no, that's not the case. That's actually not the case. There are some contractors that operate that way. It's just that we don't have, now in reflection, right? They didn't have transparency down to the person in the field that ran into an issue, right? And then by the time it gets sat on for a couple of days and kicked around for a couple of days, and then those couple of days turn into a couple of weeks, it turns into a real issue, right? So I think as much as it, to your point, like would an existing GC do this? It may not be about the GC wanting to do it to provide it to their end customer. It might be that can the GC push this transparency model down to the worker in the field that will give them real-time transparency.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to me fits in the cultural category again, right? Where it's like you're joining this firm to build the most transparent construction company, and the first rule of Fight Club is you report your change orders.
Yeah,
like there, like every second that goes by that we see a mistake and don't call it out, like that's failure. And I think that's just like a cultural thing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny actually. So back in the day when you shared CAD files with other firms, you had to have them sign a waiver before you'd FTP them your CAD files. You'd have them sign a waiver. You'd fax over a waiver to them. They'd sign it and send it back, and you'd release the file. And then the millennials came along, and they would just share files. And the leadership would say, you can't just share files. And the millennial culture said, but I just had a meeting where we said we're collaborating, that we're partners on this project. I didn't know I'm supposed to withhold information from my partner. Like it wasn't like they weren't being smart at it. We're just like, I don't understand. On one hand, we just came out of a meeting and we all like kumbaya, we're working together, hey, love to work with you. And then we go back to our desks and we're not supposed to share information. And it was a big problem for a minute with, especially as BIM got more adopted. There were a lot of people that kind of natively grew up in this idea. It's like, it's the difference between like Google Docs and Word, right? Google Docs, you get to see what everybody's doing. I kind of hate that. I like having my version and sending you my version. Your version too, Nick. You go do your changes and send it back to me, right?
Back to the architect example, like someone sitting over you in a Google Doc while you're writing is like absolutely intimidating. Hate that feeling. Produce work, type, monkey. Why aren't you typing faster? Yeah. Yeah, I think that I don't know. I'm bullish on this thing coming together. I think it's possible to. I mean, the millennial versus process dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
I also think like it's a technology thing.
Yeah,
we grew up in a world where sharing files was super easy, and it's how you got things done, and it's how you communicated it because technologically it was easy. No fax machines, straight via email. All you're doing is dropping a file in an email file, right? In an email folder. And like, I think that technology is always the enabler to move to like a higher order of doing work. And I think that I think we're here. Like I do think we're here as an industry. And so like the question is, what is that first things that pulls us forward? And actually, I saw something in your piece along these lines. So you said Uber's displacement of traditional taxis wasn't primarily about smartphones or venture capital or superior logistics algorithms. And I wanted to, I guess, push back on one thing, because what enabled Uber initially to actually exist was the GPS in a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
Like eventually all the other, transparency items that we've called out were why Uber won over traditional taxis. But Uber's existence and the fact that it could compete with traditional taxis was due to this, we were all carrying around smartphones for the first time ever with a GPS in them. And so that the car could feasibly locate you. Do you think there's anything out there that pulls us forward in the same way, when we think about projects?
I think AI is part of that equation, right? Because I think the reason why AI is part of that equation is because so much of communicating information, there's an overhead, right? If I'm a drywaller and I run into an issue, I may not know how that streams up into the critical path of the project or the budget or anything else. And I just may not be like skilled, equipped, and informed to be able to communicate that. So if the drywaller says, "Hey, I can't come in today. My dog's sick, and so I'm going to miss a day," that drywaller may not know what that impact is to the project, right? So I think where AI will help people is these unplanned events that happen on construction projects, which are like every day, right? How is that unplanned event translated with context to the other person? So I think that's where AI could have, it's the context, right? To the person that calls in sick, like, "Hey, I'm gonna have to make up my work tomorrow. What's the big deal?" Turns out the big deal, man, is that like the electrician was coming in right behind you, and now I have to call them off. And I'm calling them off for a day. They're going to go work on another project, and they're not going to be back for 2 weeks, dude. But how does the guy know? Like, how does this person know that? It's not big.
Yeah. It's real. It's hard to do. The other dynamic that's different with our analogy here is there's a lot of people involved in standing up a building, maybe more so than hauling a single individual around town.
Yeah, that is, it's the one-to-many relationship, right? It's not this one-to-one thing, right?
Yeah, makes our equation a little bit more difficult, but I think we can solve it.
Yeah, I will say last note is I think there's something about truth and transparency that's really a stress reliever, right? I think there's enough going on, right? But if you're kind of put into an environment where you can't tell people what's exactly going on and you have to carry that water, so to speak, that's tough. And this industry is tough enough, right? There's enough external forces that drive projects off schedule and everything else. So I'd like to see more of this thinking just for the sake of the people that work in our industry.
Transparency as a stress reliever.
Yeah.
It's real. Yeah.
It's better that than, not being comfortable going to your boss, telling them you're not going to make the morning deadline and spending an all-nighter in the office and killing yourself over it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a good one.
Yep. All right. It was a good talk.
Is that all we got today?
That's all we got today. You want to talk about anything else?
Let's cap it there. We'll save the good stuff for next week.
Okay. All right, man. It's good seeing you.
See ya.
All right.